Part 1. The Quiet Workhorse. The grocery store lights buzzed faintly overhead, a pale hum that had become the soundtrack to Ethan Cole's life. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, just a steady worker, the kind you could set your watch by. Every morning at 6, before the city even finished waking, Ethan was already there, unlocking the side door, stacking crates, making sure the aisles looked perfect by the time the first customers walked in. For 10 years, he had done this without complaint. 10 years of missed birthdays, of double shifts when others called out sick, of coming home with his back aching so badly that even sitting down hurt. His wife, Melissa, would tease him sometimes, "You take better care of those shelves than you do yourself." And Ethan would smile, kiss her forehead, and say the same thing he always did: "One day it'll all pay off." But one day never seemed to come. At work, his manager Curtis liked to keep things friendly on the surface. But Ethan knew the truth. Curtis was the type who remembered people when they made mistakes, not when they sacrificed. Ethan had covered shifts that saved the store from fines, had trained half the staff on inventory systems no one else understood. Yet when evaluation season came, Curtis's praise was always lukewarm, his recognition fleeting. Still, Ethan pressed on. Because he believed. Because he hoped. Then came Andrew. Andrew was new, young, and confident in that careless way only people without real scars could be. Curtis introduced him to the staff with a grin. "Meet our rising star. Andrew will be shadowing some of you as he learns the ropes." The way Curtis clapped Andrew on the shoulder told Ethan everything. This wasn't just another hire. Curtis had plans for him. At first, Ethan didn't mind. He even helped Andrew learn the system, walking him through stocking procedures, explaining the quirks of the delivery schedules, showing him how to handle the customers who always complained about discounts. Andrew laughed easily, joked often, and Ethan thought maybe, just maybe, he could be a friend. But the signs began small. Reports Ethan wrote were suddenly filed under Andrew's name. Compliments from corporate about the spotless produce section were directed at Andrew, though Ethan had been the one who had come in on his day off to fix it. Curtis began inviting Andrew into the office for strategy sessions, while Ethan was left mopping floors. Melissa noticed the shift before Ethan admitted it. One night over dinner, she looked across the table at him, his plate barely touched, his face distant. "Something's wrong at work," she said softly. Ethan sighed, running a hand over his face. "It's nothing, just feels like I'm invisible there." Melissa reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "You're not invisible. Not to me. Not to our kids. Whatever's happening, Ethan, remember who you are." Her words steadied him, but the ache in his chest lingered, because deep down he knew something was building, something ugly. And soon, the betrayal would no longer be subtle. It would be written in ink. It was a gray Monday morning when the email landed in Ethan's inbox. At first, he thought it was one of the usual memos from corporate, reminders about inventory checks or new health codes. But as his eyes scanned the subject line, his pulse quickened. Notice: assistant manager position opening. Applications encouraged. For a moment, Ethan just sat there, staring at the screen. 10 years. 10 years of sweat, of sacrifices, of staying late when no one else would. This wasn't just another opportunity. This was the opportunity. The position meant better pay, stability for his family, and more importantly, validation. Proof that all the years of being overlooked had been worth it. That night, he told Melissa. She lit up instantly, her smile bright as candlelight. "You have to apply, Ethan. No one deserves it more than you." He chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, but you know Curtis. He's never exactly been my biggest fan." Melissa leaned forward, determination in her eyes. "Then this is your chance to show him. To show all of them." Ethan applied. He poured his heart into the application, listing every achievement, every initiative he'd led quietly behind the scenes. The early mornings, the emergency shipments he'd salvaged, the way he'd trained new hires until they were confident enough to stand on their own. And for the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to dream. 2 weeks later, the staff was gathered in the break room. Curtis stood at the front, arms crossed, wearing the smug grin that always made Ethan uneasy. Beside him stood Andrew, dressed sharper than usual, his smile stretching too wide. Curtis cleared his throat. "I want to thank everyone for their hard work this quarter. We've had challenges, but thanks to some outstanding leadership, we've pulled through stronger than ever. Now, I have an exciting announcement." After much consideration, The position of assistant manager has been filled. Ethan's heart thudded. He felt Melissa's voice in his mind, whispering encouragement. This is it. This is the payoff. Curtis's grin widened. Everyone, please congratulate Andrew on his promotion. The room broke into applause. Ethan's hands froze against his knees. His ears rang. He stared at Curtis, then at Andrew, who shook hands, slapped backs, and accepted congratulations with false modesty. Inside, Ethan's stomach sank like lead. His throat tightened. Curtis's eyes flicked to him, just for a moment, and Ethan swore he saw it. The satisfaction, the quiet triumph of having put Ethan in his place once again. That night, Ethan barely spoke at dinner. Melissa tried to cheer him, but when the kids had gone to bed, she confronted him. They gave it to someone else, didn't they? She asked softly. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't want to say it aloud, because to say it was to make it real. But finally, he nodded. They gave it to Andrew. Melissa's lips parted in disbelief. Andrew? He's been there what, a year? Less. Ethan's voice cracked. And they credited him with everything I've done. Curtis, he twisted the truth. He made it look like Andrew's been leading all along. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. He clenched his fists, ashamed of the wetness threatening to spill over. Melissa knelt in front of him, gripping his hands. Ethan, listen to me. You are not invisible. They can try to steal credit, but they can't steal who you are. Do you understand? Don't let them break you. Ethan nodded, but his chest ached with a hollow kind of pain. He'd been robbed, not just of a promotion, but of dignity, of acknowledgement, of a decade of loyalty. And though he didn't know it yet, this betrayal was only the beginning. Because sometimes, the universe has a way of testing how much a man can endure before he finally rises. The days after Andrew's promotion blurred together like a storm that wouldn't pass. Ethan still came in on time, still worked his shift with quiet dedication, but something inside him had cracked. Everywhere he turned, Andrew was there, parading around with his new title. Suddenly he was the boss, strutting through the aisles with a clipboard, giving orders to people who had once trained him. Ethan, Andrew said one morning, smirking as if he were enjoying a private joke, I need you to handle the stockroom inventory. Curtis wants it done my way now, so be sure you check off the new forms. Ethan looked at the forms and almost laughed. Andrew had simply copied the system Ethan himself had designed years ago. Only now, Andrew's name was at the top. Still, Ethan swallowed his pride and said, got it. But inside, bitterness coiled tighter. Curtis didn't miss a chance to humiliate Ethan, either. During staff meetings, he'd twist Ethan's suggestions into Andrew's innovative strategies. If Ethan corrected a mistake, Curtis would cut in with a sharp tone. Thank you, Ethan, but Andrew already handled that. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Ethan's work hadn't changed. He was still the backbone of the store, but recognition had been surgically removed, replaced with calculated erasure. One afternoon, while Ethan was hauling a heavy pallet in the back, he overheard Curtis talking to a regional manager on the phone. Yes, Andrew's been an absolute star, really turning things around. I don't know what we'd do without him. Ethan froze. His chest burned. He realized then what this really was. Curtis wasn't just favoring Andrew. He was building him up, using him as a puppet, while Ethan was left to rot in silence. At home, Melissa saw the change in him. He grew quieter, distant. Dinner conversations that once were filled with laughter now ended in silence. One evening, she found him sitting alone on the porch, staring into the night. Talk to me, she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. Ethan's voice was low. I feel erased, Melissa. Like I don't matter. 10 years of my life, and it's like I was never here. They've made me invisible. Melissa held him tighter. You're not invisible. Not to me. Not to the kids. They need to see you stand, Ethan. If you give up now, you'll teach them to let people walk all over them. Her words stung, but not out of cruelty, because they were true. Ethan knew she was right, but he also knew he was reaching a breaking point. He could endure being overlooked. He could endure being used. But humiliation? Stripped of dignity day after day? No man can live there forever. It happened on a Friday afternoon. The store was busy, customers packed into the aisles, when Curtis called Ethan to the front. Ethan, we've had complaints about your stocking methods, Curtis announced loudly, in earshot of half the staff. Ethan blinked, confused. Complaints? Andrew stepped forward, holding a clipboard like a badge of honor. Yes, apparently, You've been mixing up product placements. It's creating confusion for customers. Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew it wasn't true. He was meticulous. The others knew it, too. But Curtis stood there, arms crossed, enjoying the show. You need to shape up, Ethan, Curtis said loudly. Or maybe this isn't the right place for you anymore. The words hung in the air like poison. Ethan felt every eye on him, his pride crumbling. He wanted to speak up, to shout the truth, but his voice caught. That moment was worse than any rejection. It wasn't just professional, it was personal. They wanted to break him. That night, Ethan didn't eat dinner. He sat in the dark, his hands clasped together, head bowed. Melissa approached softly. You can't let them do this to you. Ethan lifted his head slowly, and for the first time in weeks, his eyes burned with something new, not despair but resolve. They want to erase me, he said quietly, but they don't know me. I've been quiet too long. If they think I'll go down without a fight, they're wrong. Melissa touched his cheek, searching his eyes. Then make them see the truth. Ethan nodded. His breaking point had come. And sometimes, when a man is pushed to his lowest, he rises higher than anyone expects. The stage was set. And soon, Curtis and Andrew would learn that betrayal has a price. The Monday after his public humiliation, Ethan walked into the store with a heaviness in his chest. For the first time in 10 years, he considered whether he even wanted to be here anymore. His hands felt like lead as he stacked boxes, each motion weighed down by the echo of Curtis's words. Maybe this isn't the right place for you anymore. But something unexpected happened that morning. As he was organizing shelves in aisle 12, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see Rosa, one of the cashiers who'd worked at the store almost as long as him. Her voice was low, hesitant. Ethan, I just want you to know, we all saw what happened Friday. We know it wasn't your mistake. That wasn't right. Ethan blinked, surprised. Rosa had always been polite but distant, someone who kept her head down like most employees under Curtis's management. Thank you, Ethan whispered. Rosa leaned in closer. It's not just me. The others are talking. Everyone knows you're the one who keeps this place running. Curtis and Andrew, they're the ones who mess things up, but they make it look like it's your fault. Her words lit a small fire inside Ethan. He had thought he was standing alone. But maybe, just maybe, people were watching, and not all of them were fooled. That afternoon, Ethan sat in the break room, sipping stale coffee, when two younger employees, Mia and Jordan, sat down across from him. Jordan leaned in. Ethan, man, what Curtis did to you in front of everyone, that was messed up. Mia nodded. We've noticed how Andrew takes credit for your work. We all have. But we can't say anything. We need our jobs. Ethan studied their faces, earnest, nervous. They were kids compared to him, still finding their way in the world. And yet, here they were, showing courage in the only way they could, by speaking the truth quietly, when no one else was listening. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt something stir in his chest. Not anger, not despair, but resolve. If Curtis thought he'd broken Ethan, he was wrong. Later that week, Ethan had a surprise visitor. As he was unloading a shipment in the back, a familiar voice called out, "Still carrying this place on your shoulders, I see." He turned, and there stood Mr. Lawson, the retired regional manager who had once mentored Ethan in his early years. Lawson had stopped by the store out of nostalgia, unaware of the storm that had been brewing. Ethan's throat tightened. "Mr. Lawson, it's good to see you." The older man studied Ethan carefully. "But you don't look good, son. What's going on here?" Ethan hesitated, then finally let the truth spill out. Curtis's manipulations, Andrew's betrayal, the public humiliation. Lawson listened silently, his brow furrowed deeper with each word. When Ethan finished, Lawson placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, I always told you, talent rises, but only if you let it. You've been too quiet for too long. Men like Curtis thrive because good men like you don't push back. But you've got something they don't: respect. The staff trusts you. Don't waste that." Ethan's eyes burned. Lawson was right. He had allowed himself to be erased, hoping hard work would speak for itself. But in a world run by manipulators, silence was mistaken for weakness. That night, Ethan lay awake, Melissa asleep beside him. His mind churned. For weeks, he had been the victim of Curtis's game. But what if he flipped the script? What if he showed the truth, not through shouting or accusations, but through undeniable proof? The thought electrified him. The very next day, Ethan began paying closer attention. He documented inventory issues Andrew overlooked. He noted Curtis's decisions that led to customer complaints. Quietly, methodically, he built a record. And meanwhile, he kept working just as hard as ever. But this time, every box he stacked, every aisle he organized, every late-night shift, it wasn't just survival. It was preparation. Because Ethan had finally decided he wouldn't let Curtis or Andrew write the end of his story. By the end of the week, Rosa, Mia, and Jordan had quietly spread the word among the staff. Ethan wasn't alone. People began stopping him in small moments, offering encouragement, sharing stories of Curtis's unfairness. A network was forming, one Curtis couldn't see, and Ethan, once broken and humiliated, now stood straighter. His silence was no longer the silence of defeat. It was the silence of a man planning his next move. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also awakened something stronger inside him. And soon, Curtis and Andrew would discover what happens when the man they tried to erase decides to fight back. The weeks that followed were quiet, at least on the surface. Curtis strutted through the aisles as if nothing had happened, barking orders, smiling smugly whenever Ethan passed. Andrew followed him like a shadow, scribbling notes and laughing too loudly at his jokes. But behind that silence, Ethan was working. Every mistake Andrew made while managing stock levels, documented. Every customer complaint Curtis brushed off with arrogance, recorded. Every late-night shortage Ethan corrected without credit, tracked. He wasn't doing it for revenge. He wasn't doing it to humiliate them like they had humiliated him. No, this was survival. This was dignity. And slowly, the cracks began to show. It started small. A shipment of electronics went missing. Andrew had signed off on it, but the boxes were nowhere to be found. Curtis demanded answers, and Andrew panicked, pointed the blame elsewhere. Maybe Ethan misplaced it. But Ethan was ready. He pulled out a neatly organized log, showing not only the exact time the boxes arrived, but also the signatures of both Andrew and the delivery driver. Curtis's face tightened. For the first time, Andrew stammered. The staff noticed. Rosa caught Ethan's eye from across the room and gave him the slightest nod. It was working. Soon, Ethan wasn't the only one speaking up. One afternoon in the break room, Mia boldly told Curtis, "Actually, I was there when Ethan checked the shipment." "He's right," Jordan added, and Andrew left early that day. He didn't even stay to help unload. Curtis's face flushed red, but what could he do? The room had heard it. For years, his power thrived on silence and fear. But now the silence was breaking, and Ethan realized something profound. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was giving others the courage to stand, too. Then came the turning point with the customers. An elderly woman named Mrs. Carver, who had known Ethan since his early days at the store, pulled aside the district manager during an unannounced visit. "I don't know what's going on here," she said, "but that young man, Ethan, he's the only reason I still shop here. He's helped me more times than I can count. You'd be a fool to lose him." The district manager raised an eyebrow. He'd heard murmurs already. Sales in Ethan's department were holding steady, while others under Andrew's supervision had dipped. Complaints were stacking up. Something didn't add up, and the district manager began to watch more closely. Curtis felt it. The shift in energy. The sideways glances from employees who no longer flinched when he snapped. The customers who asked for Ethan by name. The subtle authority Ethan carried without raising his voice. Curtis doubled down, trying to reassert control. He called unnecessary meetings, scolded Ethan over petty details, assigned him the most grueling shifts. But this time, Ethan didn't crumble. He stood steady. Because he knew the truth, Curtis wasn't as untouchable as he wanted people to believe. And soon, everyone else would know it too. One evening, long after closing, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with a stack of papers, notes, and his phone buzzing with alerts from the employee group chat Rosa had quietly started. Each story, each piece of evidence, painted the same picture: a corrupt manager, a lazy assistant, and a staff forced into silence. Melissa, watching him from the doorway, spoke softly, "You're building a case." Ethan nodded. "Not just for me, for all of us." Melissa walked over and placed her hands on his shoulders. "Then don't stop now. Finish it." The next morning, Ethan walked into the store not as a beaten man, but as someone who knew the tide was turning. Curtis barked, "Ethan, the floor display is crooked. Fix it before the regional manager sees." But Ethan didn't flinch. He simply straightened the display, smiled faintly, and moved on. Because he knew something Curtis didn't. The regional manager wasn't just coming for a routine inspection anymore. He was coming because of the letters, the reports, the voices of employees who finally dared to speak. And at the heart of it all, Ethan's meticulous record. The man they tried to erase was about to step into the light. The day of the inspection arrived with the weight of a storm. The store buzzed with nervous energy. Employees rushed to straighten shelves and polish displays, their eyes darting toward the front entrance. Curtis strutted through the aisles, barking orders like a general preparing for battle. "Make it perfect," he shouted. "Not a single mistake when the regional manager gets here. Do you hear me?" His voice was sharp, but beneath it there was a crack of fear. Curtis knew things weren't as airtight as he pretended. Ethan felt it too, but his calm was different. He wasn't afraid anymore. He had the truth. At exactly 10 a.m., the glass doors swung open, and in walked Mr. Dalton, the regional manager. Tall, silver-haired, his presence was enough to make the room fall silent. "Curtis," he greeted coolly, shaking the manager's hand. "I'll be conducting a full walkthrough today. I want honesty and transparency. Understood?" "Of course, sir," Curtis said smoothly, flashing his most confident smile. "This store is running better than ever." But Ethan saw the sweat on his brow. The inspection began. At first, it was routine. Aisles checked, inventory scanned, registers reviewed. But then the questions started. "Why is this shipment missing?" Dalton asked, holding up a clipboard. Curtis glanced at Andrew, who stuttered. Ethan stepped forward quietly. "If I may, sir. That shipment arrived on the 12th. I have the signed delivery log and timestamp." Dalton turned. His sharp eyes landed on Ethan. "You kept records?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said evenly. "I've been keeping them for months." He handed over a folder, thick with documents. Dalton flipped through page after page, his expression darkening with every line. Around them, the employees pretended to work, but their ears strained to catch every word. Curtis's smile faltered. Andrew's face drained of color. Dalton's voice grew harder. "These are serious discrepancies. Missing inventory, false reports, customer complaints dismissed." Curtis tried to cut in. "Sir, this is all being blown out of proportion. Ethan has a history of—" "Stop," Dalton snapped, his voice slicing through the air. "Every single document here has timestamps, signatures, corroborating witnesses. This isn't exaggeration, Curtis. This is evidence." The room went silent. Rosa, Mia, Jordan, all of them stood a little straighter, their faces flickering with hope. For the first time, Curtis looked small. Dalton turned to the staff. "Is this true? Have these issues been happening?" There was a pause, a heavy, suffocating pause, before Rosa spoke. Her voice trembled, but she held her ground. "Yes, sir. Ethan's telling the truth. Curtis ignored us, and Andrew covered for him. We've all seen it." One by one, others spoke up. Jordan, Mia, even quiet Daniel from electronics. Their voices overlapped, weaving together into a damning chorus. Curtis's face burned crimson. "Lies. All of it. You're just siding with him because—" But no one looked at him anymore. Their eyes were on Dalton, on Ethan. The power had shifted. Dalton closed the folder with a sharp snap. "Curtis," he said coldly, "you're suspended effective immediately pending investigation. Andrew, the same goes for you. Hand over your badges and office keys." Curtis exploded. "You can't do this to me. I've given years to this company. That boy, he's nothing. He's trying to ruin me." Dalton's gaze was like ice. "No, Curtis. You ruined yourself. Ethan simply showed me the truth." The words landed like a hammer. Curtis's protests turned into frantic shouting, his voice echoing through the aisles as security escorted him out. Andrew trailed behind, pale and silent, eyes glued to the floor. The doors slammed shut behind them, and for the first time in years, the store felt lighter. Dalton turned back to Ethan. "You kept records. You stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. That shows integrity and leadership." Ethan swallowed hard, emotion swelling in his chest. "I wasn't trying to lead, sir. I was just trying to survive." Dalton nodded slowly. "Sometimes, that's how leaders are made." Behind them, the staff began to clap. Soft at first, then louder, until the sound filled the room. Rosa's eyes glistened. Mia smiled through tears. Even Mrs. Carver, the elderly customer, clapped from the checkout line, her voice breaking as she said, "About time." Ethan stood frozen, overwhelmed. The man they tried to break had risen. The store felt different after Curtis and Andrew were gone. For weeks, the air had been thick with fear, the kind that seeped into every breakroom conversation, every nervous glance when Curtis barked orders. But now, there was silence. Not the suffocating kind, but a quiet that felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. Employees smiled more. Customers lingered a little longer, greeted warmly instead of brushed aside. The place felt alive again. And at the center of it all stood Ethan, though he still struggled to believe it. A week later, Dalton called Ethan into his office. The tone was different this time, no tension in the air. "Ethan," Dalton began, sliding a paper across the desk. "This company needs people who care about more than numbers. People who see people. You've proven you're one of them. So I'd like to offer you the assistant manager position." The words hit Ethan like a wave. For years, he'd been dismissed, mocked, overlooked. And now, after standing his ground, he was being seen. Truly seen. He blinked hard, fighting back tears. "Sir, I don't know what to say." Dalton smiled faintly. "Say yes. Then get back out there and keep doing what you've been doing, lifting people up." With trembling hands, Ethan signed. The next day, Rosa found him in the break room, her arm brushing against his shoulder as she poured coffee. "You did it," she whispered, her eyes shimmering. "No," Ethan replied softly. "We did it." Every voice mattered. She smiled, a smile that carried both pride and relief. For months, she'd borne the brunt of Curtis's cruelty, mocked for her accent, her ideas dismissed. Now, she was free to breathe again. And Mia too, no longer the timid cashier afraid to speak up, was already volunteering ideas for improving customer service. Jordan had started helping younger employees, guiding them the way Ethan once guided him. The cracks Curtis left behind were slowly being filled, not with fear, with trust. One evening, as Ethan locked up, he saw a familiar figure waiting near the entrance. It was Curtis. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, his confidence gone. He looked like a man who had fallen from a great height and had no idea how to stand again. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Curtis muttered, "You think you've won, don't you?" Ethan met his gaze calmly. "I didn't want to win. I just wanted the truth." Curtis scoffed, but there was no real venom behind it. Just bitterness. "Truth doesn't matter. Power does. You'll see." And with that, he turned and walked away, shoulders hunched, swallowed by the darkness of the parking lot. Ethan stood still, heart heavy. It wasn't triumph he felt, it was pity. Because Curtis had never understood, power without respect always collapses. Weeks passed, and the store thrived. But Ethan never forgot what happened. The betrayal, the whispers, the loneliness. The way it felt when even his friends turned their backs. Those scars ran deep. Yet, strangely, they became his strength. Because Ethan learned something most people never see until it's too late. Betrayal doesn't define you, it exposes them. Curtis and Andrew's cruelty had revealed their true character. And Ethan's endurance, his quiet refusal to break, had revealed his. That's why, in the end, he stood taller. Not because he fought louder, but because he held on longer. One evening, as he walked past the store windows, he saw his reflection in the glass. Not the same timid young man who once kept his head down. No, this man looked back with steady eyes. The man they tried to break had become unbreakable. He smiled faintly, whispering to himself, almost like a vow, "Sometimes the ones who try to bury you forget you're a seed." And with that, Ethan pushed the door open, stepping back inside, not just into the store, but into a future he finally believed in.